time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth and Will Pelagic. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Has a lot of ability, but, he's still one of those young players that, unfortunately, man, freshmen make freshman mistakes at times. So.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here on a Thursday evening from the Palmetto State. Phil Kornbluth at a location unknown to all, on assignment this afternoon. Actually still down around the coast. Went by and visited with Coastal Carolina earlier today, and we'll hear from Coach Jamie Chadwell coming up on the program a little bit later on. Got a chance to see the construction going on at Brooks Stadium as they are expanding their facility, preparing for their first year of FBS football. Will Pelagic back in our studios in downtown Columbia, along with Jared Rogers-Martin. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. So Clemson practiced this afternoon. In fact, they're having some tryouts for walk-ons, and so they'll be a little bit delayed in getting to the post-practice media session, but we should be able to bring you some Dabo Sweeney a little bit later on in the program tonight. USC, first day of classes, and so no practice for the Gamecocks, though. Will Muschamp did speak at the Rotary Club in Columbia today, Will. He had a little bit of news regarding his starting lineup.
He certainly did, Phil. Shi Smith, if they use a 3 wide receiver formation, he'll be the slot receiver in that alongside Deebo Samuel and Brian Edwards. That was a little bit of a revelation. Going into preseason, the preseason depth chart had Terry Guger, the junior out of Atlanta, listed in that 3rd receiver position behind Edwards and Deebo Samuel. And this kind of speaks more to what we've been hearing throughout fall camp, the fact that the freshman from Union has been not only making significant strides, but has been showing a lot of speed, a lot of confidence between him and Jake Bentley. The one thing we do know is that they are going to use a lot of tight end sets in that slot, so he might not necessarily be on the first play, but when they go to a 3 wide receiver set or they try to open things up, you're going to see number 13 on the field in black.
So when you've got Brian Edwards, Deebo Samuel, Shi Smith, and let's say Hayden Hurst, and even possibly when they go 2 tight end, but still keep the 3 receivers out there, Casey Crosby, to give them 5 because Hayden Hurst can split out and be like a wide receiver.
True. And
that group of receivers, you'd have to think about, Will's got to be – it's as good as any around the SEC, if not the very top. They're not too far below the very top of the league.
I would say that they are at least in the top 5, if not the top 2, just because of the fact that it seems like a lot of people across the conference are undervaluing Deebo Samuel. I mean, think about what the SEC coaches said yesterday. They have him as a 3rd-team wide receiver, and, in my mind, I think he can be every little bit of a 2nd or even 1st-team wide receiver. I mean, you think about some of the receivers across the conference, Calvin Ridley of Alabama, Christian Kirk of Texas A&M, Antonio Callaway of Florida, just to name a few. But, as far as that goes, I think Deebo Samuel is just as good, if not better than the ones I just mentioned. And you think about the depth with a guy like Edwards, and you think also with that tight end stable being as strong as it is, especially with Hayden Hurst, who was a first-team all-conference performer as well, at least in the preseason for folks across the conference. To me, this is as solid a group of weapons as you could ask to have with a sophomore quarterback who's coming into his first year as a starter.
Well, we're almost finished with all the talking, with all the hype, all the wondering. We're starting to make that turn for home and getting ready for the opening games of the season. I really can't wait. There are a couple of games coming up this weekend. You've got a couple of FBS games that'll be played. I think CBS Sports Network is televising a couple of games this weekend to kind of get things underway. But the big weekend comes up the following weekend, and we're anxiously awaiting the start of the season just to see what we've got. I want to talk to Clemson fans for a moment. Number one, Asa Martin picked Auburn.
Yes.
No great shock.
No.
Clemson was in the final mix there, but, he is from Decatur, Alabama, and Auburn had recruited him harder and longer than anybody else. And so he turned his nose at Auburn and at Alabama and at Clemson, which raises the question, Will. Clemson has recruited so well in recent years, but they have had some misses in the 2018 class. I know they've got a lot of good gets in the 2018 class, but especially at running back. If you are a stud running back and you look at Clemson's running back core, I wonder why. For example, Zamir White is a guy Clemson went full bore for. I mean, Clemson put the full Clemson recruiting crunch on this guy, and Clemson usually gets you when they put the full recruiting crunch on you with all the love, all the interest, the visit to campus and all that, yet they could not win out over Georgia. So then they had to kind of back up and offer some guys, a couple of guys who've committed elsewhere. Neither one has budged off their current commitment. Then they went after Asa Martin, and obviously they did not get him. So what is happening with Clemson in recruiting running backs? Are running backs turned away a little bit because of
I think it has
Clemson's reliance on the passing game so much, and the idea that the ball's going to go more to the receivers, even though Wayne Gallman, he had 1,000-yard rushing seasons each of the past 2 years.
I think you have to look at the running back stable that's in there now and the fact that it is so young. You think about the fact that Tavian Feaster is a sophomore, and you think about the fact that there's nobody there who is at least older than a junior and no one that you think is going to be leaving early to go to the National Football League. So much of what happens with a lot of the highly touted freshmen is they want the instant gratification. They either want to compete for a starting slot or they want to compete to at least play a significant time at that starting spot if it doesn't happen as a freshman. I mean, think about a guy like Travis Etienne. He couldn't crack further than the fourth spot on the Clemson running back depth chart as a true freshman. And to me, that's something where if you look at him and you look at the way that his recruitment went, he was kind of brought in very, very late, as we've talked about so much. And in my mind, if you're looking at some of these different guys about whether or not they'll be better or worse than the guys they can bring in for 2018, I don't know if there's any guarantee that they are, but at the same time, you have to look at what is there. And I know some of these things obviously take care of themselves in a way, because if you bring in a 2018 guy who can start right away, then guys start looking elsewhere. You start talking about transfers and things of that nature. But, so much, like you said, runs through Clemson's quarterback, and where you say that, almost Deshaun Watson's success could be breeding a bit of contempt for those who are thinking about Clemson from a running back perspective.
All right, 800-956-7266 is the phone number. Also, while we're talking a little bit about Clemson here and Kelly Bryant as the Tigers' starting quarterback, we'll talk more about that. And I was talking with somebody yesterday, getting a little insight on all that. And, I still think there's some reason for Clemson to have a wait-and-see attitude about that quarterback situation. As it was laid out to me, you just don't go overnight from being an average quarterback to a great quarterback, which is what Clemson, of course, had with Deshaun Watson. So what was being told to me was there's going to be a drop-off in play at quarterback at Clemson, and you better be prepared for it. Now, their defense is going to be good enough to keep them in games. Greg Hugel, Clemson has had its issues even with Deshaun Watson in the red zone at times, scoring touchdowns. They may have to rely more on field goals and great defense and winning low-scoring games this year, unless Kelly Bryant or one of the other quarterbacks really surprises and plays extremely well.
The thing about it is, too, Corn, I think there was going to be a drop-off no matter what, no matter who you put in there to replace Deshaun Watson. And I don't necessarily think that the drop-off is going to be significant, that it's catastrophic. But you didn't bring Zara Cooper in 2 years ago and Hunter Johnson this year for no reason. There's a reason that you recruit the quarterback position strongly every year, because very much like the draft, you just don't know what you're going to get out of these true freshmen. And a lot of them sometimes turn to gold, sometimes they turn to mush. And people thought that Hunter Johnson was going to be able to compete for the starting job right away. Same went for Zara Cooper. That didn't seem to be the case, but that's not to say that those guys will not get playing time, not only against Kent State, but throughout the year. This race, in my opinion, is far from over.
All right, 800-956-7266. Those are our opening lines tonight here on Sports Talk. We look forward to hearing from you and getting your thoughts on this Thursday night. Lots of news, too. SEC basketball slate is out for USC. We'll share that with you. Some more recruiting. Of course, USC waiting on J.C. Horn a little bit after 7. We'll be on top of that. Back in a moment. And we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266. Talking about Clemson, Kelly Bryant, quarterback, Clemson running back recruiting as well. Shi Smith getting the nod as a true freshman to starts for Will Muschamp and the USC offense, and the collection of Gamecock receivers with the quarterback in Jake Bentley, which I think is the reason why people are calling the Gamecocks a potential sleeper for this coming season. By the way, when you go to a USC game this year, Will,
Yes.
You'll be going to quite a few. And I'm sure you've seen the stadium. You've been around the stadium.
Yes.
You've seen the George Rogers statue, which is a beautiful piece of statuesque work.
And
the Gamecocks, apparently, they wanted to have a big, tall statue of a Gamecock.
Yes.
Out in front of the stadium in time for this year.
Watch how you say that, Corn.
15 to 18 feet is the statue's size when it's going to be completed. The bottom line is they paid $1 million. They're paying $1 million in private gift money. It's not going to be ready in time for the season. Now it looks like, this is according to a story in the state, looks like now it's going to be after the season before the Big Bird is out in front of. And you know what? That's a nice touch. Don't get me wrong. I think anything that you can do to add some flavor and color around your stadium to enhance your brand and your nickname is great. That's too bad they couldn't get it done in time for this season.
Yeah, every time every time it feels like something, and of course people have been tweeting us back. I think they're mostly Clemson fans where they say, "Oh, the statue won't be ready, or the football team won't be ready either." And I'm like, "Oh, that's very nice. That's cute." My question that I want to ask to the folks who are listening tonight from either a Clemson or a USA perspective, aside from the head-to-head matchup between the two, which opponent scares you most? For Clemson, is it Florida State? Is it Auburn? Is it Louisville? For USC, is it that road game at A&M? Is it the trip maybe to Tennessee, Florida, Georgia? There are a lot of games that you could maybe look at as landmines for both of these schools, despite the fact that there is unbridled optimism for both, at least in varying degrees.
Well, I think you left off the most important one for South Carolina, and that's NC State.
True.
That looms large, even though here we go saying, well, it's an ACC team. Yes, and the ACC is not bad, and NC State is supposed to be an up-and-comer in the ACC Atlantic Division, maybe even a contender. They think they are. The bottom line is NC State believes that they're better than South Carolina. They're favored by Vegas. And they believe that they were good enough to play Clemson to a missed field goal in Death Valley last year, and most of those people are back. And why can't they beat South Carolina?
There's only one.
So you're not going to be facing a team in NC State if you're South Carolina. You're not going to be facing a team with an inferiority complex by any means.
No, and there's really only one part of that team that, in my mind, if I'm a South Carolina fan, I'm deathly terrified of, and that's their defensive line. I mean, they've got Bradley Chubb, who, of course, that's related to Nick Chubb. They've got Street, Hill, Jones all across the line. Those guys are all major players for them, and it's one of the top units in the entire conference as far as the defensive line is concerned. You put them right up there with Clemson, in my mind, and if that offensive line for South Carolina cannot control the line of scrimmage, it might be hard for them to score points against NC State. But conversely, if we have been seeing, if we get the offensive line play that we've been hearing about from Eric Wolford and from Jake Bentley and from Will Muschamp, and we get more of those quick routes that seem to have been promised to us by the fact that it seems that more of South Carolina's routes are going to be the quicker, not have to hold pass protect for, more than 2 or 3 seconds and then have Bentley throw it out and have these quick outs and quick screens, then that can at least back the defensive line off, back the linebackers off, and that puts you into more of a drop 8 situation, and South Carolina can feel free to run its offense.
Now, going to Clemson, to answer your question, I think Auburn has to be the one right now because that's going to be the initial test.
Only because it's
for
sooner.
This Clemson team.
Only because it's sooner.
It's absolutely. And the games loom larger as you win. If you keep winning, the games get bigger. So
True.
Clemson has to clear that first big hurdle, which for them is going to be Auburn at home in a couple of weeks. And we're going to see exactly what Kelly Bryant can do in the passing game, because I got to believe, Auburn's going to open up with Georgia Southern a week from Saturday, and that's not a simple game by any means. That's a pretty good up and coming. They were, of course, a dominant FCS team for all those years, and now they're trying to move up in the FBS and move up into the Sun Belt. So Georgia Southern gets a lot of respect and gets a lot of attention from any coach because they know the history of the program. And so they're going to get a little bit of a taste of things from Georgia Southern early on. Listening to Gus Malzahn from his press conference yesterday, of course, he's so he's so dry and deadpan. It's hard to get much out of him. But they feel like their team has come together nicely in their camp. They're healthy. He likes their quarterback situation with Stidham. He loves his running back situation. His new offensive coordinator has really focused. Chip Lindsey, the new offensive coordinator, they have really focused on improving in the red zone. They were horrible at scoring touchdowns in the red zone last year. That has been a focus that of their camp, and they feel like they're better in that area. So that Auburn-Clemson game, which I'm going to get to watch, and you're going to be out in Missouri, that's going to be one of the best games of that weekend, and I'm really looking forward to it. All right, 800-956-7266. Good question there by Will, though. If you're a Gamecock fan or a Tiger fan, besides playing each other, what game are you really fearful of in this coming season? Let's go to John over in Ruby, probably sitting on the back porch this afternoon. Hey, John.
Front porch.
Front porch.
I don't know. If I had to pick one for Clemson, I would probably say Georgia Tech, because for some reason that game is always a problem.
Is it because of the matchup, or is it because of the fact that it just seems to me that he comes off the bye, you're worried about focus in that way?
It's just the offense that they run. I mean, it's so seldom to see it and everything. And I mean, they've handled it pretty well in the couple of years past that Venables has been around, but used to be a real problem. But what I really called about is the welcome Will to South Carolina, and he was running these games that Carolina should be worried about. I want to ask y'all your level of confidence in the fact that Bentley will be able to walk off with the field under his own power after the NC State game. Because that offensive line is going to have a test.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Well, first of all, he's a tough cookie. He's a tough cookie. We saw him take a beating last season. Saw him roll out at times and take some real hard knocks. He's a tough guy, so he's going to stand in the pocket, and he's a guy that holds the ball a long time and releases it late. And I'm sure in their practice in the spring and now they've worked on quicker release, quicker decision, getting the ball out quicker to help the offensive line and to save his body, Will. But the offensive line is going to be better. I mean, there's just no question about it. From the center on out, they are truly bigger and stronger, and with another year of experience. Well, the question mark is depth. They don't have a lot of depth, and if any of those frontline guys get hurt after Blake Camper is used and after DJ Park is used, I mean, they're very thin after those two guys in terms of people that they've talked about being able to play.
Well, it's weird, you say that they have to be better because, quite honestly, how could they have been much worse, or how could they get any worse? The only way I think you can get worse is if, like you said, there is atrophy because of injury. And I think they have a pretty good idea of who their top 6 are, if you count.
Let me throw one more name in there. Let me throw one more name in there. So Darius Hutcherson should be another name that should be talked about. I mean, Malik Young and Dennis Daly at a tackle spot.
Those are interchangeable
in there as well. Yeah,
those are interchangeable. And I think Hutcherson, we're seeing him move in, and I saw him take some first-team reps when Donnell Stanley was getting a tape job during Monday's open practice. So he seemed to be very, very adept to that to that real exchange, especially because he brings a bit more size. He was initially looked at as a tackle and turned into actually being a guard because of his agility. So in my mind, like I said, you can't necessarily have them be as bad as they were last year. But in my mind, if you look at South Carolina through the eyes of somebody who has optimism, the only way they have modicum of success is if they keep Jake Bentley upright.
Yeah, no question. All right, Morgan on the Move is coming up after the bottom of the hour break. Dabo Sweeney a little bit later on. Interview one-on-one with Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina. And we got that big old boxing match coming up on Saturday. I'm going to tell you who's going to win, and I'm going to tell you which round. That'll be later on. We're back, Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on a Thursday night. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic.
Yo.
Rogers Martin. Don't know why he gets three names, but he does. 800-956-7266. Email talkback at sportstalksc.com. On Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Mike Morgan to join us in a moment. The Yankees and Tigers today, off the subject of football.
Did you see that today? Oh, my gosh.
Of course. I'm watching that game.
Three different benches clearing brawls. Corn.
Unbelievable.
These are the Yankees. They're supposed to be above the fray. They're supposed to be above the fray.
At the butt, throwing at the shoulders. It was wild and woolly.
Very wild.
Every time. And Tigers ended up winning it. Tough loss for the Yanks. But
Serves you right. Serves you right, Corn.
Well, I mean, he didn't mean to hit him in the head.
Are you kidding me?
It's Betances. Betances, sometimes that fastball gets away.
No, they know exactly what they're doing.
All right, let's welcome in for his weekly visit with us here on Sports Talk, another exciting edition of Morgan on the Move here on Sports Talk. Mike, brought to you by Play It Again Sports in Columbia. Buy, sell, and trade what you want. Ballard Parkway in Harbison. And by FoundersFCU.com. Founders Federal Credit Union. Learn how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. Well, I know that you're chomping at the bit to get going with the season right around the corner. What have you taken across the country from this preseason, the talk, the examination, the breakdowns? What stands out to you about the landscape of college football as we enter the season?
Well, I think if you're going to go big picture, I think the thing that pops to mind is the more things change, the more they stay the same. I mean, who is everybody picking in the playoff this year? Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, Southern Cal, right? I mean, then somebody will throw in a dark horse every now and then. Maybe it's a Clemson. Maybe it's a Wisconsin. Maybe you really want to go crazy and say Auburn is going to dethrone Alabama. But, I mean, all those schools have been in the thick of it for a while now. So I don't think there's any radical changes at the top. I do think you're going to see a little bit of a shift in – I think we're already seeing actually a shift in a couple of the leagues, including the ones that we cover the most, the SEC and the ACC. I think what stands out the most for me in the SEC is that the quarterback play should be dramatically better than it was a year ago. I only think there are two teams that really could dethrone Bama for an SEC title, Auburn and Georgia. I don't think the other 11, quite frankly, are in the same zip code. But I do think quarterback play overall will be really good. ACC, I think you're just seeing that conference continue to get deeper and deeper. And you got some great matchups really early on. So I'm looking forward to the schedule in both.
What's your take on Kelly Bryant getting the nod as the Clemson quarterback? I mean, you're like the rest of us. You haven't seen him practice. You can only go by what you think as an outsider. So what do you think, and what do you think this is going to mean for Clemson going into the season?
Here's the thing about that. Even if I had gone to 12 practices and watched him throw, I still wouldn't pretend like I knew a ton. I mean, for years and years, I listened to a certain media member or two back in South Carolina that had inside access to Gamecock practice, and they'd tell you how great the team looked and how great this guy looked, and then they'd go out and lose by 15 points. So I don't get a whole lot just from practice either. I need to see the live rounds being thrown at a guy before I really know what he's made of, particularly a quarterback. I don't look at spring football stats. I don't look at practice stats, scrimmage stats. I want to see what he does. And so from that aspect, I'm like you and everybody else. We're dealing with the unknown. Dabo Sweeney's dealing with the unknown. I mean, we know what his height and weight and 40 time is, and he knows how well he can make certain throws, but how is he going to make them, say, week 2 against a defense like Auburn? So there's a lot of question marks there. I do feel confident in saying one thing. He's not going to play as well as Deshaun Watson did the last 2 years. So you have to expect a little bit of a drop-off.
Interestingly enough, Mike, looking at Clemson's schedule, I mean, there are a couple of landmines on there. Auburn, Louisville. I would even throw the Florida State game, obviously later on in the season in there. Is Auburn the one that if you're looking at Clemson's schedule just at the outset is the one that at least concerns you the most because of its placement?
I think because it's early on now, I think Florida State is the best team they'll face all year long. But in week 2 with a new quarterback to face an Auburn defense that could be pretty salty, they're trying to figure out a few things of their own in Jarrett Stidham. But I think it's safe to say he's a little more advanced. And they have a little bit of their idea of what they're getting there. So, Auburn does have that luxury. And look, the fact that the games that they lost the last couple of years, it wasn't because they didn't have athletes or Gus Malzahn hasn't recruited. I mean, they've got NFL backs. They've got offensive linemen. They got the best kicker in the country. And they've got very good players on defense. That's a good game. I mean, I couldn't believe it was even close last year. Kevin Steele devised a heck of a scheme, and his defense really played well against Deshaun Watson and company. I don't expect them to take a major step back. They lose a couple of guys on the line that were hellraisers, and I don't know if they're going to be quite that stout this year. But overall, they're a pretty tough opponent for week 2, that's for sure.
Yeah, no Carl Lawson, no Adams in the middle, couple of big losses there, but they still look pretty stout. Visiting with Mike Morgan on the move. Let's look at the Gamecocks now. And, I mean, Steve Spurrier this week said, hey, South Carolina could be a sleeper. Some of the other people are saying the same thing. You look at the personnel, it's better. You look at the team overall, it's older. Muschamp seems to be very comfortable in his skin going into year 2. What would you consider to be a reasonable, successful year for this Gamecock team?
7-5.
Hey, set that bar really high, don't you, Mike?
Well, I mean, you could say 8. If you say 9, then you're just being silly. As a goal, I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, but
don't you get out of the gate 4-1? They play 5 games in September. Could you see a 4-1 start?
Well, I think for one, the Kentucky game right off the bat is pretty scary. What is that, week 3, 4? I can't remember off the top of my head.
3.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think Kentucky is going to be one of the bigger surprise teams this year. I think they could finish 3rd in the division. I mean, look, if we're just going to kind of look at best case, this is what you typically do when you're focused on the local team. You look at every swing game and you say, well, they could win that. They can win this. They can win that. 9-3 or 10-2, but reality tells you you're not going to win all those swing games. There are major holes on that team, as you know. I think I love what they have at quarterback. I like what they have at running back. I love what they have at tight end. I like what they have at receiver. Offensive line, and I certainly have questions about their defense. So I think the East, as bad as it's been, is going to be improved, and that would be bad news for your 9-win scenario, because I do think Florida is going to be tougher. I think Georgia is going to be tougher. I think Missouri and Kentucky are going to be tougher. So when you add all that up, a 9 is not to ask at a Will Muschamp in year 2.
Mike, we got about a minute. Who do you think is getting more pub than they deserve right now, just nationally?
Nationally? Good question. I think I'll keep it within the SEC for a minute. I don't know how I feel about LSU and Ed Orgeron. I love their coordinators, and they always have athletes, and Arden Key's a beast, and Geist might be the best all-around back in the country. I don't know if they really upgraded that head coach. I thought it was a very convenient hire. I don't know if it was a very good hire. And people just assume every year LSU is going to compete with Alabama. I don't even think they're the second best team in the West. I think Auburn is, and who knows, maybe somebody else even steps up there. But people still think about LSU as that kind of contender, and I'm not so sure about that. And I also wouldn't be surprised if Penn State might take a little bit of a step back, even though the bottom half of the Big Ten does not impress.
All right, Mike, thank you, man. Good talking to you. We'll catch up with you again next week as we get toward that first Saturday for most of the teams in the country in college football. Mike Morgan with us, Morgan on the Move here on Sports Talk. We'll be right back. Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on a Thursday night. Give you some recruiting in a little bit. J.C. Horn's going to be announcing a little bit after 7 o'clock. It's going to be announcing via the folks at SEC Country in their studios, and they're going to put that up on Facebook Live. If it times out well from our standpoint, we'll bring that to you live if possible. If not, we'll tell you. This is a guy that's gone back between South Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. For the longest part, it looked like South Carolina, Alabama. Then he went and visited Tennessee, and then the Vols have gotten in there. Now the feeling is more towards Tennessee by the online experts in this case. I don't know. From talking to him a few times, he seemed to be torn. I wouldn't be surprised with any of the three that he might announce for tonight. But a good player, and if you're South Carolina trying to upgrade, man, Will, this is a guy you'd love to have.
Yeah, and it's really hard to kind of get the feeling about, whether or not any regional ties would bring him anywhere. His dad played at a community college, and they're from Fayetteville, North Carolina. So I don't know if there's any regional tie here to South Carolina that they could pull from, but it's certainly something where they've been talking about him as being a real big contributor, and this would be 2 in a row for them because of the fact that they just got Josh Vann. So in that way, this is all about rebuilding that stable. And if you think that Deebo Samuel is going to be an NFL prospect after this year, after his junior year, you got to be able to build around, Brian Edwards or Trey Smith and Shi Smith and maybe Josh Vann and J.C. Horn, if that possibly makes it happen.
You mentioned Shi Smith today. Will Muschamp speaking at the Columbia Rotary Club, as he does this is his second time, but the USC head coach Spurrier spoke there every year too in the preseason. He's just following along those same lines. He announced that Shi Smith will be in the starting lineup for the Gamecocks if they open in a 3 wide receiver set. So that's tells you something about what they think about Shi Smith, Will. And not too long ago, of course, it's been a while since we've had a chance to talk to any of the Gamecocks because there's been no media availability. That will change tomorrow and Saturday. But receivers coach Brian McClendon not too long ago had some things to say, did he not?
He did, and I do want to at least correct myself before I say it, because I was thinking about Joe Horn being the dad, being the wide receiver, and JC, of course, is a corner. So that is also another position, though, that they will need to rebuild from also after this year with, of course, the departures of Jamarcus King and Chris Lamons as well at the nickel position. But, earlier this fall, Brian McClendon, very, very complimentary not only of Shi Smith, but not only just him as a player, but also his versatility.
I think he has a lot of ability. But he's still one of those young players that it's unfortunately, man. Freshmen make freshman mistakes at times. So, and a lot of that stuff just comes with what comes with reps. So we just got to make sure that we do a good job of getting them working, getting them caught up exactly how we need things done. But he's a talent. He's a talented young guy.
Where would be the ideal place to put him? In the slot aside, Deebo, or on the opposite side? Where?
Well, I think the best guys can be multiple. They can be moved around and not so much just locked into one spot in particular. So right now that's the goal, and trying to kind of grow some of those guys to try to learn 2 or 3 different places. So it's hard to say, hey, this guy's always right here, and that way people can take them out of the game if they choose to, or if they game plan certain things to do that. So right now just trying to learn, trying to make him learn a couple of different spots.
Into Deebo kind of as a mentor from that perspective. They've been running a lot of the same drills with each other, and I noticed that too at Monday's open practice. So I think a lot of people are thinking that eventually he can grow into the role that Deebo has created for himself, not only just as a pass catcher, but also as a runner in the jet sweep game for them. But for right now, they can use both of them on the same field at the same time. And if you can have that weapon and you have to make the defense choose, that's certainly a lethal thing to have to be able to defend.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun offense to watch. I don't have any doubt about that. And he's, in high school he was phenomenal at Union County High School. For the longest time, it looked like he was Clemson bound. But when the Tigers got Amir Rogers, who is maybe even a little shorter than Shi Smith, who's listed at 5'10". Amir Rogers might be a little bit smaller than that, but they felt like they had their guy. They had their slot guy, and Shi Smith was still out there, and South Carolina put the big push on him. You know, he was coached early in his career by Steve Tannehill when Steve was the head coach at Union County. And I remember a few years ago at the coaches clinic when Shai was a ninth grader, we were talking, and he said, I've got a ninth grader everybody is going to want. And it was Shai Smith, and he was exactly right. Which reminds me to tell everybody, of course, next week we go into full-blown football mode every night on Sports Talk. So on Monday night, we debut a brand new guest. Well, he's not brand new. He's been with us before. This will be a return guest on Sports Talk for a weekly segment called First and 10 with Zach Willis, former football coach in our state at South Carolina and Newberry, and has coached outside of the state at Michigan State and Union College in Kentucky and Pikeville in Kentucky. He's going to give us the early look in the week at USC Clemson, focusing on those two with his contacts and his knowledge, breaking it down. Tuesday, of course, a Talking Tuesday with the head coaches from USC Clemson, Will Muschamp, Dabo Sweeney. Wednesday, the M&M boys will be back, Corey Miller, Will Merritt, and they are chomping at the bit to get at each other because Will thinks he's got something. I'm sorry, Corey thinks he's got something for Will this year. He's tired of taking Will's beat down that he's had to suffer through in recent years. Thursday, the return of the coach and the quarterback, Steve Tannehill and Chuck Reedy. In fact, next Thursday, we will be at one of our favorite places in 5 Points, group therapy. Your first trip to group therapy, right, Will?
I've had group therapy of another sort, but not this particular one.
Well, this particular form of group therapy will probably do you a lot of good.
I gotcha.
And we'll be there, and we'll have Chuck and Steve with us, of course, to break down USC and Clemson and talk about everything that they know inside. And they know a lot. You know, they have their contacts, and they know a lot of good, insightful stuff. On Friday, the football filibuster returns. It will be Governor Jim Hodges coming off a losing season. You know, Governor David Beasley can't be with us this year because I think President Trump, he sent him he's on assignment somewhere, who knows where. Where's he at, Jarmart? Where'd they send him?
So Nikki Haley brought him along and recommended that he be the director of the World Food Program. So he has matured out of sports talk, I suppose, to tackle hunger across the world instead of pick college football games.
That seems unreasonable. We should have stood for more.
Donate somebody to the world. That's a good thing. Somebody who can go solve world hunger. So that's a good thing for Governor Beasley. So we've got the Attorney General of the state of South Carolina, Alan Wilson, who will be serving. He'll be the right-hander in the conversation. And, of course, Governor Hodges will be that sneaky left-hander. So we look forward to that. Lee Sterling will be along with his Sterling picks once again on Friday nights. And that will do it. That'll be – and, of course, we'll have Mike Morgan with us on Thursday nights and all the other stuff in between as we get you ready week by week. So I think it's the best lineup in radio in the country. And if you're interested, of course, in South Carolina and Clemson, nobody touches it when it comes to the insight and the knowledge that we'll bring to you every week here on Sports Talk. Looking forward to it. Will, you'll enjoy the battle between the Pastor of Pain and Will Merritt every Wednesday night. They go at each other pretty good.
I'm waiting for all these little head-to-head matchups that it seems like you have here. It seems like there's going to be a lot of confrontation when the fall comes around.
Well, we don't like to call it confrontation. That's not, this day and age, we don't do confrontation anymore because everybody gets a participation trophy. So we don't really do confrontation.
Oh, come on, Phil.
We do.
Phil,
we do discussions.
We are bare bones radio, here. Man. We don't take any prisoners, man. We are not a wussy radio network. We are a hardcore radio network.
I'm just trying to blend in with today's world. It's a millennial world. Just trying to blend in.
Millennials ruined everything.
I give you that. You got that right. All right, top of the hour, and we'll be back.
Yes, sir. It's going to be C.J. Fuller. You know, he finished up last season running second behind Wayne. Also came through the spring as the number one guy, and he held his own during camp. And then the next guy is going to be practice to practice, day to day until we get to the game. But
time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth and Will Pelagic. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
All right, welcome back in. It is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Hour number 2, Phil Kornbluth down along the coasts for tonight, tomorrow nights, and Will Pelagic back in the studios with Jared Rogers-Martin. NFL exhibition football tonight. The Panthers are in action against Jacksonville. Cam Newton will make his preseason debut tonight. We're awaiting the announcement of cornerback J.C. Horn. This is being done via SEC Country on their Facebook Live page. Typical. Right now we're sitting through at least 7 minutes of blah, blah, blah about why he's blah, blah, blah. And typical the way things are done these days when it comes to recruiting announcements in a lot of ways. It's South Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama for J.C. Horn. And we're going to bring it live, are we not, when we get that cue?
We're going to try to. I'm looking at the latest interview that he did with the folks at Gridiron Now. He said that Tennessee and South Carolina have separated themselves. He said he loved the family atmosphere they have up at Tennessee. He talks to the coaches there almost every day, and he feels at home. But at South Carolina, he says they had the best relationship there than with any of their coaches. He says he loves T-Rob, and he loves also Will Muschamp, and he loves the fact that they think that they can do a good job of developing him and getting him into the player that he wants to be. So at least from reading that, Corn, it seems like Alabama is out of the mix. It seems like this is a 2-horse race now with the Vols and the Gamecocks.
Well, let's if we can, Jarmart, let's bring it up because he is now on the screen being interviewed. He's about to give the announcement here as he's talking to whoever the host of this extravaganza happens to be. So I'll let you keep. Oh, he's got his dad there with him too. Joe Horn, the great Joe Horn, who was an outstanding player. Okay, let's go to the live announcement from J.C. Horn.
As your offers, and I just continue to work hard, and it all came with it.
And Joe, I'll ask you both as a father and as a guy who's kind of traveled this path yourself, long-time football career. How proud of you are you of JC today, and what has been your thought kind of watching this as a spectator as he kind of goes down the road that you yourself kind of went down?
Well, I'm very proud of him. I'm very proud of him. The most important part to his career and growing up is behind closed doors, asking all the questions. And when we go on the trips and coming back home is when I get all the questions. So I'm proud of the kid. He's very, very humble.
Well, I'm also curious to you as well, Mr. Horn. You know the football process. You know a lot about these programs that JC's choosing between. Right. He'll make his decision, but I know that your influence weighed heavy on his decision. What have you told him along the way?
Well, there's a lot of different stories you hear from different coaches. And at the end of the day, where do you feel comfortable right now? What's comfortable for you? And I told him I'm going to try to stay back and talk to you behind closed doors. But you got to understand, every coach is going to have a different story. Every one of those coaches is going to want you to come to their program. So you have to be humble, son. And when you get home, when you feel like talking about it, I'm going to give you the real deal. And I'll give you my advice on where I think you should definitely think about going.
And JC, I'll ask you, some guys like the recruiting process. Some guys just want to be over with. Some guys sort of enjoy the attention. Some guys are kind of, wanting to be more in the background. What has it been like for you going through the recruiting process? The phone calls, the letters, the attention from fans. Has this been something that you've enjoyed, or is this something you're just sort of glad to have a chance to put behind you at the end of the night tonight?
It's just a blessing being able to go through the recruiting process because, that's every high school football player's dream. And I'm just blessed to be in this position. But I'm more of a background type of guy. I didn't really like the attention like that. But, it's like I said, it's a blessing. So I'm just ready to get the decision done.
We talked to your dad a moment ago about his influence on your recruitment, his influence on the decision you're going to make for us coming up in just a couple of moments. How about some of those other voices that you've listened to, other people in your family, some of the assistant coaches that you've kind of come in contact with on the recruiting trail? Who else has been an important voice to listen to in terms of the decision you're about to make here in just a couple of minutes?
Well, I guess we'll get something on that Corn here in a couple minutes, just because I think they're trying to at the folks at SEC Country are trying trying to milk all of it for all it's worth there a little bit, but
I call this being in the barn with the cattle. They're milking this thing,
making
forever.
LeBron's decision look like it was handled promptly.
Well, this is part of the problem that we have today in covering recruiting. With these internet networks and everything. I mean, it's simply about a guy making a decision, and we've built this thing up and dragged this thing out in so many different ways and of course you have to report on it if you happen to cover recruiting, with the drama of, my top 30, then my top 20, then my top 10, then we get to the announcement. We have a special show for it. I mean, I like the kids that just make a decision, thank everybody, appreciate the interest, and put the word out there, and then move on. So
you're not a fan of these guys. You're not a fan of these guys who will sit up in a gym and then they'll sit in front of a table with like 3 hats and then pick one.
Full disclosure, I mean, I participated in that many years ago. We went through the thing where we broadcast some of these things live on Sports Talk, and they set it up around us. And we thought it was kind of a neat thing back then because nobody else was really doing it. And then, of course, everything else kind of followed what we were doing. And
everybody wants
after we did a high-profile announcement, and the kid ended up changing his mind a few weeks later and going through the whole process again, we said the heck with it.
I think everybody wants to feel like they're the guy, in a particular way. And I think, from that standpoint, this is a different type of thing, and I wonder whether or not we'll see it go, like you said, the way of the dodo, just because it seems like a lot of these guys will renege or pull back or draw back. But in my mind, I think it's hard to take these guys at their word until they put actual pen to paper, because a lot of times a commitment is not really a commitment.
Yeah, that's in some of their minds. That's correct. And here we go again. They're taking breaks in this thing for some reason. I don't know why. There's no commercial running or anything like this. This is ridiculous. I mean, if you're waiting to build your audience up for whatever reason,
it's a fine line. You might be losing them. You might be losing them in that realm. But
all right, now we got more family members and the 3 helmets of USC, and USC's helmets in the middle, Tennessee, USC, and Alabama left to right. That's how the helmets are lined up. Looks like you got some family members. Are we ready to go back to this thing, John Mart, or are they still okay, let's go.
Recognizable anywhere in the country. The garnet and black of South Carolina, recognizable as well, and the Alabama Crimson Tide. Those are your 3 finalists. Are you ready to do this? You got some words you want to speak to the audience right now?
Well, first off, I want to thank God for blessing me with the ability to play the game I love, and just give me the opportunity to choose between these 3 great universities. I want to thank my family for staying behind me, my mom and dad, my older brother for just always pushing me. And for the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be attending the University of Tennessee.
There you go.
So there you go.
University of Tennessee for J.C. Horn.
I mean, they're losing Shaq Wiggins. They're losing Justin Martin. They're losing a strong safety in Todd Kelly. I mean, there's going to be an opportunity for him to play right away at Tennessee. I don't know if he'll be playing for the same head coach or not, but it is what it is.
Listen, Tennessee is a very strong program with strong roots, of course, in the Southeast, and they recruit extremely well. They have for years. Maybe not to the level they did when Philip Fulmer was there, and he had that great coaching staff,
right.
and they could go anywhere and pluck a great player. It's a very attractive place. I mean, 100,000 seats plus, and all the amenities around that stadium and the facility. So Tennessee is hard to recruit against. If they ever get back to a high level, they could really mop up in recruiting. And this is a good pickup for them. This is obviously a disappointment for South Carolina, because this is the kind of kid, when you're trying to build a program as Will Muschamp is, you got to get every one of these gems that shows that kind of interest in you. And look, this kid is probably going to take some official visits during the season, just like Asa Martin said he would too. He said he was going to visit the schools that he did not commit to, Clemson and Alabama. So we'll see if that happens. We'll see if J.C. Horn takes some visits as well, because as you know, a commitment just lets everybody else know the target, and they go that much harder after them. So J.C. Horn commits to Tennessee, and we'll be right back.
Yes, sir. It's going to be C.J. Fuller. Yes, sir. It's going to be C.J. Fuller. Well, we never know.
All right, we are back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. And sorry, I got an orange slice in my mouth. I just flipped over to catch the Panthers game on television down here at the beach. And television station out of Myrtle Beach has got the Hartsville South Florence game on television. I don't particularly usually like watching high school football on television because I don't think we need to be televising high school football. But we are. And so this is the lone high school game in the state tonight, Hartsville and South Florence. 4 minutes to go in the first quarter, and it is scoreless. What I was going to say before we had to jump to the announcement of J.C. Horn to Tennessee, Will, is we were talking about, doing these press conferences and announcing it and all that kind of stuff. And I'd be hypocritical if I totally criticized it, because we used to do that. We went through a period there, a couple of years, where we had some high profile recruits in the state, and we did the things live. So yes, we participated in that form of delivering the commitment, but got away from it after a little while, especially after one high profile kid, after committing, live on our show and everybody making big hullabaloo over that. Then he ends up that summer decommitting. It was to South Carolina. It was Gary Gray, decommitted from South Carolina, ended up committing to Notre Dame. And his coach, who was never really in favor of doing it to begin with, said, never again. Never again will I go through the build up to a commitment only to have a kid change his mind. So
yeah, I mean,
it all depends on the situation.
And again, I'm not saying that entities aren't guilty of it, because we know that this thing provides attention and there's an appetite for it, and I understand it too. But it has to be a point in time, I think, and this is a philosophical discussion too to have, in a larger sense. But there's a point where I think it almost kind of jumps the shark, and I think announcements like what we saw today are kind of a prime example of it. It's like, okay, how much is too much? I think, well, that's a little too much.
I understand the dramatic buildup, okay? I mean, on the one hand, I'm like, enough already.
Yeah.
Make the announcement and let's move on. But then again, I also understand from their standpoint, they're trying to attract viewers to their website, to their Facebook page, and that's how you do it. But maybe if I was in the same situation, I might have done the same thing.
But in my mind, Phil, I mean, at the same time, what's to say is the difference between just coming out and having the exclusive chat with the one guy and saying, hey, when you make your decision, you tell me first, and then, then you have the exclusive story. I mean, the eyeballs that'll be created on that story from the exclusivity standpoint almost, I think, make it worth more of the clicks, because you're exposing everybody to the same comments based on that platform. And like you even said, the views went completely down after the kid announced. And, at that same time, I'd almost just say, hey, I'd rather take the exclusivity off the air and then broadcast and on the platform in that way. But that's just, again, a philosophical difference on that.
But on Twitter, there is no real exclusivity. I mean, you put something on Twitter, it's retweeted within 5 seconds to somebody else's timeline, then all their people get to read it. And as far as those people know, it's coming from John and not from Bill. Bill might have done all the work, and Bill might have had it out there 5 seconds ahead of John, but John's people are getting it from John. And, there really is not much true exclusivity like there used to be in the reporting business. Speaking of a little more recruiting information, things are quieting down as the high school kids are getting into their seasons. The college guys are focusing on their teams, except for an announcement here or there. So today you had Asa Martin of Decatur, Alabama, announce his commitment to Auburn over Clemson in Alabama. But he has said, I did talk to him last week, and he did say he planned to visit all three regardless of his announcement. And so J.C. Horn tonight announces for the Tennessee Vols over USC and Alabama. We'll have to wait and see what he says to people tonight, if he still plans to continue with any official visits. And one more note, Clemson offered 2019 defensive back Jalen Simpson of St. Simon's Island in Georgia. He also has a USC offer. So there you go. All right, Clemson has come off the practice field, have they not, Mr. P?
They have. We did get at least a starting running back announcement from offensive coordinator or co-offensive coordinator Tony Elliott. John Mart, do we have that ready to play? I guess we will at least effort that, but we will at least tell you that C.J. Fuller will get at least the starting looks at running back position. The 5'10", 215-pound junior Fuller was chosen ahead of Adam Choice and Tavian Feaster, as well as Travis Etienne, who we were talking about earlier in the program, is the true freshman. Here's the co-offensive coordinator, Tony Elliott, talking about the starting running back position going into Kent State.
Yes, sir. It's going to be C.J. Fuller. He finished up last season running second behind Wayne. Also came through the spring as the number one guy, and he held his own during camp. And then the next guy is going to be practice to practice, day to day until we get to the game. But right now you got Choice and Feaster that are battling out to be the second guy. I think all three of them are deserving of playing time, and so it's a much better situation than it's been in the past. Got a lot more depth with those three guys that are all capable of having quality reps.
heard so many good things about Travis. How close is he to catching up with the other 3 guys?
You know, as a runner, I mean, he's a guy that I just don't want to mess him up as a coach. You know, he's one of the most special talents I've had. Considering Ellington and McDowell and all those guys, he's just very, very natural. So as a runner, he's there. It's just, you know, getting him in position to be able to protect the quarterback. And as fast as we play, it's hard to be situational and put him in just to run the football. But he's making progress every day. He came out of a system where, you know, everything's new to him. You know, just the way that we communicate the play call is new to him. You know, identifying defense is new to him. But he's a smart young man. It's important to him, and I anticipate that hopefully sometime this season he'll be in a position where he can get in there and play a little bit.
So that's Tony Elliott, offensive coordinator, talking about the running back situation, and again talking about Travis Etienne, who at least we will see some of this year. We are assured of from Tony Elliott. We also heard from head coach Dabo Swinney after the practice. This is the last time we'll hear from him before his week of game press conference against Kent State. This is the head coach.
There were a couple. I mean, I think we had like 40-something guys, and you know, it's pretty neat for our guys to see that many guys that would love to have an opportunity. And we got one spot, you know, for somebody, and you know, a lot of times that spot's determined by just your need and what we need on the scout team and stuff. But then we try to evaluate them for the spring too, and we can have more guys out. So, but it's really cool to see that many guys coming out trying to compete for a spot. But we'll look at them again. We'll talk about it in the morning, and like I said, we kind of build an inventory of guys. You never know, somebody might quit or whatever. But did not see a Renfro per se, but you never know. We've had a lot of guys come through the walk-on program that have been good players for us. Got a few on the team right now.
Speaking of those spots, Caleb and Kelby Bevel got scholarships along with
they did.
Spires.
Yeah, proud of those guys. You know, Bevel and Godfrey, and the 2 Bevels and Godfrey. You know, they're going to be graduates,
right? And
really proud of those guys that worked hard. All 3 of those guys, and you know, it was big for us too, and it helps us because to bring a mid-year in, you can only bring mid-years in to replace a graduate. You can't bring a mid-year signee in to replace just a guy that you put on scholarship or to replace a guy that leaves early. You can only bring a mid-year in to replace a graduate. And so we're, as y'all do know, we're pretty tight on scholarships this year. And so you know, we've got a little bit more room now for mid-years, which is critical.
And that is Dabo Swinney again talking about the walk-on tryouts that he had post-practice earlier today. Also talking about the scholarships that he awarded to both Caleb and Kelby Bevel, the 2 Florida offensive lineman natives who are both seniors, and also Pat Godfrey, the offensive line graduate man out of Green Lawn, New York. So from that perspective, at least a slower news day on the Clemson side, but at least we did find out about C.J. Fuller and also about some of the tight end work as well. You know, it's interesting, Corn, as we look at Clemson going into this Kent State game. I almost feel like there's at least muted optimism or at least muted anticipation going into that because of the fact of we know what's going on around down the road at least 2 weeks after that with the Auburn contest looming.
Yeah, Mylan Richard getting the call at tight end, and again, you're talking about replacing a terrific tight end in Jordan Leggett, and how much of a drop-off, how much production drop-off is there going to be in the passing game, and also how good of a blocker is he going to be? You know, time will tell on that. But those are a couple of big announcements made today by the Tigers and by Tony Elliott. When we come back, we're going to talk a little Coastal Carolina football with the interim head coach there, Jamie Chadwell. That's up next on Sports Talk.
Fuller, he finished.
You never know. You never know. There were a couple. I mean, I think we had like 40 different from a timing standpoint, but been starting on a Wednesday and then having 2.5 weeks to get ready. This year we started on Wednesday and we got
about 8 days away from the opener. How far has this team come since day one of camp?
Extremely. I've been pleased with
You doubt me, Mr. Willie P. I just said that Hartsville's going to put 50 on South Florence, and they just broke off a long run to make it 14. It'll be 14-10 if they kick the extra points.
You don't understand this by now.
26 to go in the first quarter.
I don't understand this. I can wind you up and spin you like a top sometimes. Sometimes I just say stuff to irk you, and I think you haven't realized.
Right?
You haven't realized that by now. Very sarcastic and dry humor individual. Very sarcastic.
I can tell that. I can tell that. Now, earlier today over at Coastal, inside Brooks Stadium, I had a chance to catch up with the Chanticleer's interim head coach, Jamie Chadwell, right after he put his team through another long practice. And I asked him how camp and practice had gone to this point in preparation for UMass.
Extremely. I've been pleased with the progress, really just the attitude mentality. We're still not, at least offensively, I don't still think we're ready to, play a game yet. We still have too many some miscues and just not clean and efficient yet, but we've made a lot of strides, and it's been, obviously it's a challenge. You're like, offensively, you're bringing in 8 new starters, but then there's obviously the challenge of Coach Mogilvia and dealing with that. So it's been a unique camp, probably one of the most unique that has been around here, but I've been proud of the resiliency of the team and their focus.
Quarterback situation, is it sorting itself out?
It is. We're still not right now ready to name a starter, but we have a good idea who or whom, multiple guys that might play or help us contribute. I think it's going to be probably a good still 3-4 week battle, first 3-4 games until we get into our conference where we're going to really make a decision on who we feel like can help us long term. But we got a good idea here early who we think we can trust to put out there and be consistent for us.
What have you brought to the offense in terms of your ideas and techniques that you wanted to instill?
Well, a lot of it is some similar things that they've ran, maybe different terminology and maybe focus on different things. But I hope that we've brought a toughness and a mentality and identity that we're going to be able to run the ball and be able, no matter if everybody in the stadium knows it, we're going to figure a way how to do it. And then really just you hope that we can be able to put our playmakers in position. That's what we really focus on to try to make some plays for us. The ones that we have are really good. and we need to be able to showcase them. And so we've tried to change some things around to get them the ball.
What do you see as the strength of the team overall?
I would say I think we've got some good defensive players. We got some solid depth there. You know, a lot of guys that have got a lot of experience. I think we've got a really good D-line. They're young, but I think they got some talent. And I think our receivers. I think we got some really good receivers. We're young in a lot of the other places, and not the best time to be young going into a new conference. But I think that'd be our strength. And I hope towards the end of it that we can continue. I feel like if we'll play together, that'll be a strength down the line.
As you take this step up, is there a calmness? Is there a confidence that you guys can compete in the Sun Belt? I mean, I know you were preseason picked last, which shocked everybody, I think, considering the reputation of the program, even though you are stepping up. But is there confidence that you can go into this league and not finish last and make a good showing this first time out?
There is a lot of confidence. The expectations here are such that there's not a down year. There's not a rebuild, and no matter what the situation. And so the kids have been preparing like, hey, we're going to win every game. I think they understand it's a different challenge, and our players know that, and our coaches know that every game. Maybe in the past, every game, you were the favorites, except maybe one or two. Now it's not the same. Probably the underdog in every game. But I think our guys have sort of really taken that on and said, hey, we've done so well. Now we're getting doubted a little bit, and use that as a chip on their shoulder. So I think we'll use that as motivation. But we know it's going to be a challenge. But I think our guys, the expectations are you win. And that's what we're going to try to do. As
we stand here in the middle of Brooks Stadium and you look around, you see the construction going on. As a member of this coaching staff, though brand new, how do you feel about what they're building here and what this place is going to look like in a couple of years?
Well, it's pretty special, honestly. I mean, you one of the reasons being here, you get the opportunity to make a jump. It hardly ever happens. And to see not only the team make the jump as far as how that works, but making these improvements to the stadium. I mean, it was already a nice stadium, but now when Bowen in, after next year, we're going to have 20,000+, it's going to be really nice. And I think once we continue to build the program in the right way and get the scholarships they need to be and start making those strides, there's no reason that Coastal Carolina can't be a force nationally. We all believe that's why we're here. But it's going to take us a little time. Coaches are bad at patience and time. And so we understand how that works. But it's pretty awesome, pretty sweet. Every time you come down, something gets better. Now, if they get it done by the first game, they're working hard, Phil. They're working real hard if they get it done by the first game. They're going to be working more hours than coaches. So, but we're going to pray to be ready.
So you talk about being a force nationally one day. Is there a program out there that you guys look at and say, we can be just like them? I mean, you know how it is in college football. You've got the blue blood programs that are there, and they pretty much have the top 15, top 20 locked down every year. But occasionally somebody slips up in there. Do you see yourself, for example, like a Boise State who emerged a few years ago as a power and stayed there for a little while?
I think we can be that. I think we have the resources. I think we have the commitment. We obviously have the location. We're going to be in a place where you can recruit people too. I think that can be a viable go to make the jump that they did and make a huge commitment like they have. And they've been ultimately successful. I mean, every year they're ones everybody's talking about being in the top of college football. Not maybe not top 10, not 15, top 20, but they can knock people off and get in a bowl game. So we would like to pattern ourselves hopefully after that and be that type where you're winning your conference, but when you're playing these out of conference games, you're having people going, I don't know if I want to play on this till turf, and so I think that's a team that how they build it, what they did, the commitment they had is something that we will model ourselves after.
I was at Charleston Southern yesterday, got a chance to watch them a little bit, and Coach Tucker was on. Just wanted to get your thoughts as you've kind of separated yourself from there, but you left behind what appears to be a pretty good football team, and they're telling me on the defensive side they should be really strong.
Yeah, I think, we felt coming back that it was probably on paper going to be our most talented team overall. Now, we lost some good running backs there, but felt like it was going to be pretty talented. So, I know Coach Starker's done a great job of bringing some new coaches in there with fresh ideas and maybe new excitement. Looking outside in now for the first time and seeing their schedule and who they play. I mean, you've got a chance to repeat, hopefully, and get back in the playoffs and make a deep run. And I know that's their expectations. I never liked when you go somewhere and somebody says, oh, you should win this many games. I don't know. You don't know what goes on the inside. Right. But I do know that their expectations are high and they feel pretty good about the team they have. And I'm excited to watch them. Those guys mean a lot to you. And they're not the reason you left that place. They're one of the reasons you stayed. And so I hope they win it again and make a deep run. And if they can win the national championship, I'll be right there cheering for them. Because
I like how you put that. As you take a look back from the outside in, and now that you're here and you see what's happening here, and you look back at what you had to work with at Charleston Southern, facility wise and all that, your success there, does it kind of leave you scratching your head about how did we do this? How were we so successful? How did we become a top 10 FCS program, considering the things we had to overcome?
I never really looked at it that way. I've tried to be everywhere, and I've not been. This is the first time being probably at a place that has a lot. And, I've been in a lot of the has-nots. Try to look at it. Hey, it's not what about you have; it's what you use with it. And it doesn't matter what other people think on the outside. If you feel good about what you do on the inside, you can overcome a lot of those things. I think I'm more proud that the success, the culture, the way people view Charleston Southern is completely 180 now. And so nationally, people know who they are. And I'm more proud of that, no more than, hey, how did this happen? We got a bunch of really good players that bought into what we were doing, and they started playing for each other, and they won a lot of games. That's how it's happened. It was chemistry. But I'm more proud of that, knowing when people talk about Charleston Southern, people know who they are. And it's not whether it was a laughingstock or not, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it's not anymore. Right. And that's something, no matter where I'll go from here, I'm proud of.
Knowing the team the way you do back there, would you want to play them this year?
Oh, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. So I don't know, I'd love to play them. It'd be great. I don't know if I can handle them emotionally. That'd be tough emotionally because of the kids that you recruited being just 1 year removed from that. Maybe 3 or 4. Maybe 3 or 4. But that 1 year would be tough, just because of the relationships with those guys. And then I don't want to see them wanting to beat my butt like crazy. You hope they all like you.
All right, Jamie Chadwell, our visit with him over at Coastal Carolina earlier today, and boy, I tell you what, he's a terrific coach. If things work out. By the way, he did tell me that he's in touch with Coach Moglia. Coach Moglia is around the office, and he can go to him anytime if he has a question about anything. And Coach Moglia is doing what he has to do to get his health back in order so he can return to his football program as soon as possible, probably sometime in early 2018, and resume his coaching duties in preparation for the 2018 season. All right, we'll be back. By the way, that long touchdown run by Hartsville was called back. So far you've been saved, Willie P.
Very happy about that.
It's 10-7 South Florence in the second quarter. Back in a moment.
September 2nd?
Yeah. Well, I'm as comfortable as you can be. I mean, it's the
You guys need to work.
All right, a couple of quick notes and then a few more comments from Clemson coach Dabo Swinney, fresh off the practice field a little while ago. We mentioned earlier in the program, SEC issued the league basketball schedule for the men's teams today. USC will open up on New Year's Eve at Ole Miss. Then they're going to spend pretty much the rest of January at home. Missouri on January 3rd, then Vanderbilt at home. They do go to Alabama and then to Georgia. Then come home for Kentucky and Tennessee. They go to Florida, then a home game with Mississippi State. So that's 5 home games for the Gamecocks in January. They go to Texas A&M and Arkansas to open February, a home game with Florida, road trip to Tennessee, home games with Auburn and Georgia, then a trip to Mississippi State, home game with LSU, and then a trip to Auburn. There's also a game against Texas Tech in there from the
Big 12
SEC Big 12 Challenge.
Yeah, and that schedule, I mean, it's about as favorable as you could possibly expect. Yes, you have to go to play at the O-Dome in Florida, and also you have to go on the road to a couple of other difficult places, but I wouldn't call them unwinnable games by any stretch.
No. But, I mean, talk about an unknown. I mean, this is a brand-new team practically with the turnover, and you don't know if the guard's going to be with them moving forward. So a lot of questions about Gamecock basketball. Citadel announced his 2018 schedule. They're going to play at Alabama on November 17th of next year. They'll open up against Wofford at home in September of next year.
I wonder if the beer garden will make it by then.
Yeah, really. Missouri has announced that defensive end Akil Byers is out 3 weeks with a sprained left knee, so that'll cost him the USC game.
He will, and it's interesting as we keep talking about that. The one thing that is very common between both Missouri and South Carolina is depth on defense. That is not a player that they could afford to lose, especially because they already had a defensive end go down earlier this year in Nate Howard. So, for disciplinary reasons. So, in that regard, they are not long at that position.
At Florida, linebacker Ventrell Miller and James Robinson cited for marijuana possession. And Miller's already been suspended for the Michigan game. And this is Robinson's second brush with the law involving marijuana this year. So they got some issues down there at Florida going into this season. And that fight between Somerville and Spartanburg resulted in a total of 16 players, 8 from each team, being suspended for 1 game by the high school league.
It's not good.
And Spartanburg has suspended its players for Friday's game against TL Hanna. All right, so Clemson back on the practice field. Dabo Swinney, his last comments until he has his weekly presser on Tuesday. He was asked after practice this afternoon, now, you're focusing on Kent State. All the camp stuff's behind you. The team's kind of coming together. How are you feeling about it?
This far into training camp, and, what do you think you guys need to work on most before September 2nd?
Yeah. Well, I'm as comfortable as you can be. I mean, it's the first game's always it just seems like it takes forever to get here, and there's so much to do. But I think we've had a good camp. It's been a different camp because the timing of everything has been way different. The past few years, we've been starting on a Wednesday and then having 2.5 weeks to get ready. This year, we started on Wednesday and we got 10 days. So it's been different from a timing standpoint. But I think I had dinner with our seniors last night. We all went out, and that was one of the things I wanted to kind of get some feedback from them on how they felt and what they thought about camp. And they were all really positive. So that made me feel a little better. But we try to do a good job, and now we're at that point where it's just details. It's details. It's game plan. It's details, and it's everybody taking ownership. Because we're getting ready to play an opponent now, and it's not Clemson on Clemson. I mean, it is details of a game plan, and we only got a certain amount of time. We got to be very efficient with that time. So that's really it. Just getting them fresh, and then polishing up the plan, and making sure we prepare for what we think we're going to see, but also prepare them for the unknown. Because in an opener, you're always excited to play. And it doesn't matter who you play, you're excited to play, but there's always challenges in an opener because way more time than you ever have to prepare for an opponent.
And I think, I'm wondering how much, Corn, the game plan is. And again, I know that you really can't focus on more than one game at a time, but I'm wondering how much advanced prep they are devoting, or at least advanced time prep that they're devoting to Auburn, knowing that this Kent State game, albeit one you obviously have to focus on and focus a lot of your attention on, but obviously the money contest, if you will, is in 2 weeks, not one.
Yeah, I'd say 0. I think as a coaching staff, you don't dare look ahead with the players. Now, behind the scenes, their analysts are breaking down Auburn film. They've got the Auburn film broken down and ready to be looked at, and the coaches are probably doing that. They're probably, after their daily work on Kent State, they're probably going ahead and working on Auburn, just like Auburn, after their daily work on Georgia Southern, is looking at Clemson. But you don't dare go on the practice field and mention Auburn to your team because, Kent State, they have scholarship players too. They're an FBS program too.
I'm aware.
They might not be very good. They might not match up with you, but as soon as you take your eye off the target, that's when somebody – what, you're laughing?
I don't have a lot of respect for Kent State playing this game.
Do upsets not happen every single day in the world of sports? Do we not have upsets?
I understand we have upsets. I just know that they're also playing the defending national champions, and I know that they are missing a lot from that national –
the defending national champions are spread out around the NFL.
I understand that.
Deshaun Watson's not walking through that door, Tiger fan.
I understand
Ben
that.
Boulware is not running down that hill.
I'm not understanding.
Mike Williams is not coming out of that locker room.
I'm not understating that point. I'm just saying, if you don't beat Kent State without a half-hearted effort, if you will, there are more problems with this Clemson team than we would necessarily initially see. I don't think they're going to have any problem with the kind of effort that they'll bring to the table to beat Kent State.
My point is, there's no way the coaches are doing anything on the field towards Auburn. They just don't operate that way. Coaches are, they're fooling you, but you'll ask them sometimes, and they don't even know who the next opponent is. They will tell you in question and answer sessions. Who do we play next? Who do we play 2 weeks down the road? They like you to believe that they are in a cocoon and they are only focused on the upcoming opponent.
I know you'd like to believe that, but again, it's a 39.
So you think they're out there working on X's and O's for Auburn?
The line is 39, Phil. 39.
Okay.
That tells you. That tells you that Vegas
actually lining up and working on schematic plans for Auburn.
The fact that the line is 39.
I'm asking you a question.
I'm saying that Kelly Bryant could go down there with his right hand tied behind his back and go out and beat Kent State by half 100. Okay. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it doesn't matter how much prep that they do towards Kent State.
That is not the question. You brought up the idea that Clemson is practicing for Auburn this week and next week.
I think that they have,
and I'm saying they're not. And I'm asking you if you really believe that they're out there practicing.
I'm not necessarily saying that they have this week, but I would be shocked if there wasn't at least some advanced work done either in the quarterback room or with video sessions at some point during this fall about the opponent that they will play week 2 versus the one they will play week 1, who they are expected to easily get past. A team that, by the way, has won 8 games in the last 3 seasons combined.
Well, I have no doubt that during the summertime, players and coaches probably looked at film, and the first few weeks of August, first couple of weeks, was all about getting the team ready. But ever since they started getting ready for the season, my guess is they've been focusing on Kent State. The way Dabo Swinney operates and his coaching staff operates, they don't take anything for granted. It wouldn't matter if they were a 60-point favorite.
I wouldn't say they're taking it for granted. I'm just saying there's probably some chatter going on. It's hard not to. Hard not to believe.
South Florence is leading Hartsville. This is a mild upset brewing over in Florence. The Bruins up on Hartsville 10-7.
Make a liar out of you. Yet? Make a liar out. 7-0 Carolina. Touchdown pass from Cam Newton to Kelvin Benjamin.
There you go. On their way to the Super Bowl. Thank you, Jarmart. Thank you, Willie P. Have yourselves a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow night back here on Sports Talk.